Hello, everyone, and welcome to After Dawn, a Hallowed Haven studio production where we discuss the latest happening in our current flagship show. I'm your host, Grizz, and today we'll be talking about Apotheosis Session 6. No. We got a pretty wholesome show ahead of you. The band had to deal with a terribly well done, home cooked meal with a side of fatherly assurance. We finally got to see some results to Riz training, an extremely intimate marathon done by Clint, a birthday done by everyone around a certain individual to remind that person of their worth and how much people value him, and tackling some side tests, including a very long essay, some dank barbecue, and putting a location in the proper hands. And today I am joined by Gary playing Oliver.
That's me.
And the person who's making all of this happen, Bloodied Porcelain.
What's up?
How you both doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Doing good. So this is going to be a slightly manic episode, everybody, because I was an SPC. So whatever format that we usually do is kind of up in the air, and we're going to be even more chaotic than usual. And if Coda were here, it would be even more chaotic than that. But let's see. A question for the both of you. Well, it's going to be a little harder for BP. So BP, pick one of your favorite NPCs to play.
Am I restricted at all from this answer? Because I got asked this last season, and I got told that there was a certain one I was not allowed to choose. But if there's no restrictions, I know who I'm going to say. It's not even hard.
There is no restrictions because the question's kind of silly. So
the Morrigan.
Cool. All right. The Morrigan and Oliver. The question for both of your characters: favorite flavor of ice cream and why?
Vanilla.
Oh,
it's Oliver. What else would you expect?
That's not surprising.
Vanilla bean?
No, just vanilla.
Oh.
Maybe a butterscotch if he's feeling adventurous.
Oh, really wanted to branch out. Let me get some butterscotch in here. A butterscotch swirl in the vanilla? Would that be partial?
Maybe. That's certainly something that could happen.
Okay.
Oh no, I hadn't really thought about it.
Probably not. Wait, what is the Morgan's favorite ice cream? Well, I really break out the Morgan.
I get Rocky Road vibes from the Morgan.
I was thinking probably something like mint chocolate chip.
Oh, that could that could be a good one as well.
All right. A lot of green.
Frigid, just like her.
All right. Thank you so much for answering that icebreaker. I love to ask them because it's just, it's just fun. So for this is kind of for both of you, but it's mostly for Gary. How have you both felt about his I freely admit several times in After Dawn to not watching season 1 because I'm just a terrible person. But how have you both felt about his like loosening the screws a little bit and opening up a bit more throughout this season, especially, and what would you attribute that to? Proud.
It's for me as the player. It's been very fun because I intentionally wrote Oliver, or I guess not wrote, but created Oliver to be a very kind of reserved, kind of coiled up within himself type of person, with the full intentions of that kind of the screws loosening over time. And the way it's gone about and happened has been really exciting and really interesting and a whole lot of fun. And I love just the different ways each player or NPC interacts with him in an effort to get him out of his shell. And I just thoroughly enjoy that and love how effective it's been.
I'm mostly just incredibly proud. It's so. I tried to provide opportunities in season 1 for Oliver to loosen the fuck up. and pull the stick out of his ass, and he fought me every step of the way. And so I was starting to think it was just never going to happen. And of course, right around the time I was just like, fine, fuck it. If he wants to have a stick up his ass for the whole show, that's fine. That's fine. If Gary's having fun, that's all I care about. And then the second I gave up is when Gary decided he was going to start loosening up, and I was like, I see. I needed to stop trying. That's what this is. Okay.
It can't happen all at once. It's got to be like a slowly progressive thing, because I did consciously do some things in season 1 to show Oliver loosening up in very, very minor ways, like ways you probably wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, I noticed, but they seemed more incidental than on purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like, one of the things I did was, like, throughout the first couple episodes, everyone was like Mr. or Mrs. their last name. It was Miss Baxter, Mr. Strom, Miss Massacoy, but slowly over time I was like Coda, Sarah, Chris, and that was like an example of it. But that's something that can easily fly under the radar, which was kind of the point.
Yeah. No, so I'm just super happy that it finally happened, because it was my dream for him to loosen up. I didn't think he was going to go so balls to the wall, pun intended, so quickly, but I'm happy that he did. I'm very proud.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in this season, I even said it, just like, he definitely seemed to, I mean, there was screws loosening, but would you say, and this is not to say anything against the people who were in the season before, would you attribute a lot of that to dealing with Clint?
I think Clint has definitely had a hand in it, because,
I mean,
like,
too, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, because the other players from the previous season definitely had a good impact on him. Like, I think the relationship between Oliver and Chris in particular was very interesting and very cool. I liked the kind of almost like brotherly bond they had, and I really saw that helping Oliver further in the future. But Clint has such a unique way of just not necessarily getting under Oliver's skin, but just being so out of left field that Oliver doesn't know what to do about it and has to, like, in the moment, recalibrate his thought process to account for just Clint being Clint.
Yeah, and there's also, go ahead, BP.
No, I was agreeing. It occurred to me while we were talking about this that there are some weird but really kind of wholesome and delightful like through lines between Chris and Clint, especially when it comes to their relationship with Oliver, that I hadn't really considered until like just now. In a lot of ways, they are weirdly similar while still being each other's like polar opposites, which I think is interesting.
I 100% agree with that, which is like, I think even in a previous episode, I had Oliver say, like, I think you have really gone along with another member of our band named Chris, because it also occurred to me, it's like, yeah, they're very similar in certain ways while also being complete opposites, like you said.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and there's like people influencing Oliver, but that's also Oliver's influence that I've been seeing. Also seeing some of the older stuff, like kind of jumping ahead, but also jumping behind. Just near the end of the episode 6, you talked about the little note that Coda left for you, and you're just like, I'm so proud of that kid. Just like seeing Oliver's influence on other characters as well has been really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, like, because he is like he was there as Coda's like teacher in high school, and he kind of saw like the hellion that she was, and now sees like the woman she's grown into, and I think that relationship is also like super awesome, super important to both Oliver and Coda. I'm speaking for Sticker a bit there, but I imagine she might agree with me there. And I thoroughly enjoy it, and I love exploring it further and seeing how else it's going to go. And I've always enjoyed scenes between Coda and Oliver.
Yeah. Now this is going to be, and Gary can kind of, if you want, to kind of direct some questions at BP too. So for BP,
Mm-hmm.
You've had 6 episodes this season to storytell. What I can imagine one scene in particular that kind of caught you off guard. But what has been like a player action or even an SBC action that has caught you off guard so far this season? Or has everything kind of gone the way you expected?
Oh, well, there was a scene in this just past episode that certainly caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting Oliver to have quite so much Riz all of a sudden. It was a great line. I was like, what?
He's had it all along. He's been too scared to use it.
So that was really awesome. That was a surprise in the most pleasant of ways. I can't say I was both surprised and not even remotely surprised by the hour and a half in front of the gate in Yomi. Although I can't necessarily say that that's a pride thing. That was just a like, oh, Jesus Christ, okay. We're going to be here a while.
We're very efficient.
Overall, though, I think the most surprising thing was actually seeing how well and how immediately everybody sort of gelled together. Because it's always a concern, right? Like when you start a new show or a new game, there's always an episode or two where people are like feeling each other out and figuring out like what the dynamic is. And so there's always like an episode or two where things are slightly awkward. And we just didn't have that with this, which was weird because our first episode of the season was 2 completely new people that Gary had never played with. And Gary was the only member left, there from the core group in the first season. But they hit it off like they had been playing together for years, which was incredible. And then we introduced Coda in season 3 or in episode 3. And I really worried that because the dynamic had become so gelled together and so good so quickly with the other 3 that Sticker was going to have a hard time with it. But Sticker hit the ground running and was just like, no, I'm good. Like, I know exactly how I fit into this. And I was just like, well, that's amazing because I fucking didn't.
I don't have any idea.
And it's just, they just haven't looked back and they've done so incredibly well as a group, almost too well at times because it's hard to get them to get anything done because they're so busy role playing.
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all have tasks. Poor Stefan's going to be in prison for years because you guys are taking so long.
Our bad. I fully agree. There's just something special about that first episode where it's like for the first like 30 minutes, we had like the exposition and everything, so it wasn't quite there. And then just like the moment we had the opportunity, it was like, yeah, okay, we see exactly how this is working. We know everyone's role in this dynamic, and it just flowed so well. And I had the same concerns you did, actually, where it's like, I really hope Coda manages to fit in as well. And she did. She just immediately slipped right in, and it was great.
Yeah, she hit the ground running.
I mean, this is just coming from a viewer because I was a viewer at the point. Obviously, at that point, everyone's saying how surprised they were. You hit them with a dwarf party, like it was 3 dudes drinking. And just like letting loose, and that's how you got to know each other. Like, there's not a lot of better ways to like see how the dynamic works.
Okay, hold on. I have to correct the record here because you say that I hit them with that. That was them. I just facilitated. Like, it was their idea.
Sorry, you provided the booze.
I'm pretty sure it was Gary who was just like, well, since we're Irish, aren't we supposed to like go out with a party or something like that? And I was like, well, I guess we're doing that now.
I mean, you could have. You couldn't say no, but you could have said no. You could have been like, "Nah, guys, get going, get out of here, go." But no,
you have to honor those good improv moments, and having Ulrich around for the goofy is always a good thing. Like, I don't think I've ever seen Ulrich SPC or play in a show that had the potential for something to be silly, where he didn't just ham it up to the most extreme degree. So there was no way I wasn't going to do it.
You know, it was super good, and I will say, yeah, it was me who initiated it, and I feel a little bit selfish about it because I was like, as the player Gary, I want to see an Irish Pantheon party or just like a Scion party for like 3 dudes from the Irish Pantheon because that just makes sense. But from a character perspective, Oliver's not gonna like do a party, so I had to justify it almost in Oliver's mind, where it's like, yeah, no, it's just a small get together. We'll have like a few drinks to get to know each other so that we can understand each other's like strengths and weaknesses when we're out in the field, and it's like a team bonding experience. And he was like, wait, no, this is not what I meant. Oh,
Well,
it's out of hand.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. Let's see here. So Gary.
Yes.
Despite his best efforts, which weren't really the best because he was thoroughly distracted at the time, Oliver had a birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of laid it out, and you kind of did say how much it meant to him, but kind of put us in his shoes. Like, also there's like a few other things I want to bring up at the same time around that, but like, how did that feel for him? Because it genuinely felt like you did an excellent job. I really wish Shango had been there, to be perfectly honest, of just being like, guys, this is, you could feel the emotion of just like it meant the world, but he just, for someone who's so literate, he just didn't have words at the time.
Yeah, that's something that happens a good bit with Oliver, actually. It's like he's very eloquent and literate, but when he gets very emotional, he has problems with his words, which is a fun thing to do. But yeah, for him, it was a very big deal because what he said initially was true. Like, he didn't really celebrate his birthday all that often growing up. So it was just kind of like, it's just a day. It's just like, I am a year older. There's no need to celebrate. It's just a thing because I think I mentioned it in the episode as Oliver, where it's like, yeah, like when you're growing up as a kid and you have like his very noticeable affliction with his eye, other kids, since they're kids, they're going to be like, I don't really want to be around this kid, and they're weirded out by him, and so you don't get very many birthday parties as a kid. And then once you get older, children get a bit more cruel. So, like in high school, he just didn't want to do it at all. He still had friends, of course. He only had like a few close friends, but by the time they graduated, they had like a falling out. This is all Oliver backstory stuff. So yeah, exclusive. But that's a big reason why in college Oliver was very like reserved and secluded, and why he kind of became the person he was, because he didn't want to be hurt like that again. And which is just another reason why he didn't really go out and celebrate himself and things like that. So to be in a situation where like it is being insisted that we are going to celebrate your life and your birthday, he really didn't know how to comprehend it. And then once all the celebration actually like started up and it's all happening, it hit him. It hit him hard, and it's like, wow, these people really care about me, and as a result, I care about them so much more. And it was a very, very big deal for him.
It was so wholesome, man.
Yeah,
it was incredibly wholesome.
Yeah,
so good.
And going off of like, because I didn't, because this is where everything gets a little weird, because I'm just going to talk about how my SPC felt about Oliver during the episode, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah. When he's like insisted like your parents love you both, talking to Coda and Oliver's like, sure. Yeah, that was like, he didn't have time to address it, but he would have. Yeah. So that's something I can't wait to talk about, because it's going to be really interesting for me to watch and experience as a viewer how he goes forward with a like newfound confidence in, I guess, his own self-worth. Does that make sense? That's what I was kind of getting at.
I'm super excited for it, and I think I mentioned this like during a high and low when we were doing highs and lows, but like Oliver probably likes Shango a whole lot. He's probably one of Oliver's favorite gods because up until now he's seen the gods as like, well, they're behaving like gods. It's in their nature. He's like, it makes sense, but I don't have to like them for it. And Shango seems like like a genuinely good guy, a good father, or at least like a better father than most of the gods. And he's like, is this how it should be? Yeah, this is how it probably should be. And so yeah, that's the whole thing. And I want to say, as a player, I love Ogma. I love the relationship between Ogma and Oliver. I love Diver. He does a great job, and I can't wait to see how that relationship potentially progresses forward with Oliver's newfound confidence and self-worth. But in Oliver's mind, it's kind of like, this is a guy I hardly know, who I know logically is my father, but thus far has treated me like a student effectively. So my views of him aren't super high.
Yeah.
And how that might develop and change, I'm really, really excited to explore, given the opportunity.
All right. Now, in the smoothest segue of all time, speaking of being high, so BP playing Damien.
Speaking of being high.
Speaking of being on the weeds. So, Damien was just a wild scion to be around and kind of roleplay with, even briefly. But like, when you first came up with the scion, and then when like we brought up like going back to him, I don't know how much you've actually talked about him, but for this, it's just like
not a ton. I don't think he's come up much on After Dawn. So
yeah, so it's like when you were coming up with him, did you think he'd have this much influence in their lives?
No, not really. He was meant to be like a fun kind of look at some of the other ways that scions live and exist. Not every scion is out necessarily fighting dragons every day. That was kind of the point, and that had to like give them a glimpse into other lore and myths that are canonically true in the world, like the apples are real and the Hesperides are real, and you can go and you can steal apples from Hera's garden. It's not necessarily recommended,
not an advisable decision, but you can do it.
But you can do it, and there are /were dryads there, and that's why that shit's magic. And like, it was just stuff like that. Like, I wanted to kind of give a broader look at it, at the world of Scion, and show that this is not just a world that exists, but a living world where, regardless of what the players do, certain things are going to keep happening, and other scions and SPCs and whatever are going to continue to exist and are doing their own thing and have their own relationships. I really thought it was going to be like a one-off. They'd pop in once and that would kind of be it.
Yeah.
And then everybody fell in love with Damon and the Dryads, and now they want to be there all the time.
Yeah. Because there's also like the conversation that was a lot longer than I thought it would be, but the conversation between Damon and Coda, I also kind of felt you being like, I mean, I've kind of fleshed this dude out, but now here's like a really long conversation where I'm kind of like, it felt like you were not on the fly, but like, oh, I'm kind of fleshing this character out much more than I meant to. Or
so when it became clear how important Damon was going to be to the PCs back in season 1, I put a lot more thought into him. Like, I'd put some thought into him anyway, because I had to explain why the hell Net was sending them there. Beyond just go get the apples. Like, I had to decide why Damon specifically was the one who was going to have them, what the relationship between him and Net was going to be, that sort of thing. And so I kind of knew that they were going to be pretty close. Like, they were going to be pretty good friends. But I also, but in this last episode, I also kind of wanted to make it clear that for all that Damon seems like a kind of spaced out stoner, he's still a scion, which means he's not dumb. He's good at reading people, and he understands the dynamics at play between the people around him, even if it seems like he's not paying attention.
It's a scion of Dionysus, right?
He is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a speaking of gods and stuff like that, I don't know his lore in the Scion books, but Dionysus has never felt like just a partier. He connects people. Like, yeah.
That, and Dionysus is also much bigger than like the god of wine and parties. Like, originally he was a god of madness. He's scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he was one of the like what?
So he invented dolphins by turning people into them.
Right. He's one of the gods that technically existed before the Greek pantheon did. Like, he got basically grandfathered in, and very similarly to how Manon and MacLear ended up in the Tuatha, where they came from much like older pantheons in the real world, but also in the lore. And they kind of got adopted into the pantheons in their region. So, you know, yeah, I figure his scions don't necessarily all have to be super, super keen, but Damon's not as dumb as he seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see what we got here. Yep. Lots of dryad fucking.
Yeah,
that is what they do in most of the lore. Like, everybody's just like, oh, they're so sweet and pretty, and I'm like, they're also really horny, guys.
No, I'm just going through my notes, and I'm like, nope, that's there. Yep.
It is the root term for the phrase nymphomania.
Yep. if they're not sleeping with a hero in myth, they are telling gods no and causing problems.
Actually, yeah. Speaking of other smooth segues, Dryad.
Dryad fucking.
I wasn't actually where I was going, but I'm like, hey, now's the time. Yo, Oliver got his go, yo. Congrats. Yeah. You did it.
He did it.
I'm so proud.
Yeah. It was fun. It was good.
Yeah.
I was happy for Oliver as a character.
I think the only disappointment I had in that moment was that because he kept on sending dryads at Shango, he was going to go over and be like, hey, you got this, or something, just like a dad to his son, like, go get the girl, like anything. But it was like, you threw brisket and woman at him, like he completely got sidetracked. Was he going to take that leap? Or, like, let me put it this way: if it hadn't been for the influences the increased influence of a lot of the player characters over these past few sessions about that issue, would he have done that in the first place? Like,
I think this season was very important for Oliver's development, where there was a moment that occurred in a previous episode where his kind of like view of himself and the way he interacts with the world sort of shattered. He kind of realized he had been lying to himself for so long about how much like worth he had as a person, and that really really affected him. And since it was all like pedal to the metal action going on, he didn't really have enough time to address it and sit down and think about it. But once we got to Damon's farm again, and he finally had at least a few moments to kind of breathe and address those things in himself, he was like, I need to take a leap here. I need to prove to myself that I can be brave. And that was his way of doing so. It's like, this is something I want, so I'm going to at least try to get it, and what happens is what happens.
Awesome. No, that was really, because I was listening and I'm just like, oh man, what a great conversation. This is amazing. I'm so happy for him. And then you delivered the line. I'm like, yeah, that's smooth as fuck. Starts to write down. And then they kiss. I'm like, oh, what? Fuck that. I was mad that I was muted. Yeah, no, it was a really awesome moment. And then we are going to, like, given that and given everything else that's happened, we're going to go and kind of shift into just asking each other questions. If you guys have any questions for me or for each other, go ahead and ask. But yeah, that's where we are.
I do have one because I noticed it during the session, but I wasn't in the scene, so I couldn't say anything about it. And I'm wondering if Sticker just misunderstood, or if she was actually right, where it's Net and Kareem's new partner is Lucas. Is it just Lou again? Is it still just Lou in disguise, or is it actually like Lucas? Is there actually a real Lucas?
Oh. You'll have to investigate that
Yeah,
shit in
we'll find
character.
out.
I'm not gonna tell you.
That's fair. But I just heard, I was like, I don't know if,
Maybe Lou's just up to shenanigans.
yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, Sticker, I think it's just still Lou. I think it's just him wearing a face again. But I could be wrong. Yeah, we'll have to see.
So I have a question for Gary. You guys are in the middle of doing all these labors. Is there a pantheon that you are particularly interested in seeing the labor for that you haven't? Or what of the labors that you have done so far do you like the most?
Ooh, okay. The ones I'm looking forward to are, it's a toss up between two. It's the Greeks, because that's kind of like, the archetypical, scion labor, like that. That's all throughout their mythology. So I'm curious on what we might get to do. I'm really excited for that. And also, I'm super interested in what the Aztecs are going to give us, because we talked about it in a previous After Dawn episode, where it's like, yeah, the Aztecs are pretty brutal. So I imagine we're going to have to do something pretty dang brutal. And I'm curious about it. I'm really interested. But so far, the labors we've done thus far, I this feels like it's cheating a little bit, but my favorite one probably has to be the Texas barbecue one, just because I think that's so unique and so fun. It was awesome. I was just like, yeah, of course, making Ganesha Texas barbecue is a labor. Why not? That's so much fun, and I'm so glad Gavin got to have a go at it. I also thoroughly enjoyed the essay writing one, but that's mostly due to the fact of how well I rolled for it, because I did really good. So I was like, I feel really good about myself. Suck it, Huang Di.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a confession to make regarding the labors and how they've panned out. So my original plan was that there was going to be 2 seasons of labors. And I was going to basically do 4 to 5 in each of the 2 seasons. And then I got this wild idea that because I had less players this season, I could cram all of the labors into one season. If I took 3 of them and I made them smaller and more manageable, so they wouldn't take like really truly dedicated playtime. That was before I knew how hard it was going to be to get you guys to like do anything except role play.
It was a good plan. It was a good plan. Unfortunately, no plan survives contact with the enemy.
I had it like, you could ask Grizz, because Grizz has seen the SPC chat. I had it very meticulously mapped out what was going to happen in which episode, and what SPCs I was going to need, and how things were going to go. And it included the 3 mini things where I was just going to drop them on you at some point during the season, and you guys would just like get to do little bits and pieces throughout the season, and we'd kind of wrap it up at the end. And then you guys spent 2 episodes in Yomi, and I was like, that's fine. I can manage this. It's okay. I got this. And then I realized that I had screwed up on the timeline for when the Loa were going to need you. And I was like, well, shit. I can either completely reorganize everything and make the Loa like last. But I don't like their without getting into what's going to happen, the Loa labor is kind of its own thing, and it's a little weird and a little unique, and it doesn't work well as a finale. It works really well as a stepping stone. And I was like,
that's fine.
Well, it's just because of the type of story that it is.
Yeah, I know.
I heard like our labor's gonna be like, yeah, you're gonna stand here and guard the gate for the party. And there's like, no, I'm like, there's no fucking way. We're just standing there in front of a gate the entire time. Something's gonna happen.
Nah, fam. What do you mean? No.
I'm excited.
So I was like, well, shit. Okay, so we've got to do a time jump. Well, if we're going to do a time jump, and given how they've been like, dead set on forcing me to give them so much role play time in the middle of all these things that they have to do, I'm just going to give them like a mid-season session to get some of this shit out and address some of their baggage so that they can be productive again when we come back. Which, maybe pie in the sky, we'll see. But I had a point with this. I was going in a very specific direction and then I got distracted.
Things get wacky. That was the point.
But yeah, you guys completely threw me sideways and I was like, well, shit. And so now I'm in this weird position where I don't know if I have enough labors to fill a second season anymore, because we have gotten more done than was originally planned, because I made the labors shorter and more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, at this point, y'all are going to finish up the labors in like the first half of the next season. And I'm going to be like, well, I don't know how to make this transition work.
Or it's us, and it just takes us a whole another season because it's us. We'll vamp even more than we already did.
Oh, God.
Instead of spending an hour and a half in front of a gate, we'll spend 4 hours in front of a gate.
Please no.
God.
No, anytime we spent a lot of time doing something, a part of me would be like, this is really fun. This is great roleplay. Another part of me would be like, oh, fuck, we're supposed to be getting stuff done right now. Oh, shit.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
For every episode that gets wasted, I say wasted, but every episode where you burn a ton of daylight just role playing and not really being terribly productive on the timeline, you just have to understand that other people are being much more productive than you.
Yeah, that's another one of my concerns.
Any other questions for each other or for me?
Grizz.
Hello.
Understanding that you haven't seen season 1, so you're not familiar with all of the SPCs and all the gods.
Very true.
So far, who's your favorite?
God, I'm an asshole. It's gonna be like me.
It's definitely me. I'm the best one here.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, I think it goes without saying that you're not allowed to pick yourself.
Honestly, Lou pre-transformation, just Lucas. Lou as Lucas. It was just fascinating how Stabby did it, and then the transition during the reveal. It was just like we don't get to do reveals like that very often, like where it's planned out so far ahead of time and then it just clicks like a motherfucker. So for me, watching that happen was like, I wish I hadn't known about it. So because I wish I could have been in the audience for that to happen. Cause it's like, how do you do, fellow kids? And then rips off mask and like, and suddenly a god. Yeah. I will say, as far as because obviously I haven't seen Ogma yet personally, but Clint to the Morgan.
Oh God, Clint's mommy issues. I can't with that boy.
So...
It hurt in a way, and then I'm really happy I got to reverse that as Shango. And like I said at the very beginning of this, just a healthy helping of fatherly assurance, which it turns out all three of these Scions needed, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
The moment that particularly got me, where I was like, "Oh no, poor Clint," was like you picked up the phone for your son, and Clint was like, "Do you always do that?" And you're like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh, poor Clint."
Yeah, the byline for any Scion game really should be a game of mythology and mommy and daddy issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just kind of how it goes. Like, the Loa are kind of the only pantheon that have, like, healthy relationships with their children.
Yeah.
And that's not even all of the Loa, just most of them. Most of the Loa are pretty good parents. They're pretty involved. They're pretty, like, familiar with their kids. Hell, most of the Loa, like, some of the Loa gods know their kids from birth rather than showing up later in life. Not all or even most of them, but there are a couple. So yeah, it was really interesting introducing Shango, who comes from that very family-oriented pantheon, throwing him in amongst a bunch of, like, adult Scions who were like, yeah, my parents only really show up when they want me to do shit.
Yeah.
Or when I fucked up really bad.
Yeah, and that's why props to you, because you're just like, hey dad, I need a favor, and it's like, yeah, of course, what do you need? And then Clint's just like like over in the corner, like, dad, I need help. Yeah, I got you, son, no worries. Here, have a Sprite while I'm at it. Sit down, I'll take care of it with a phone call. There's cake in the fridge. You know, like,
I will say though, it's been great that Clint's, like, mommy issues have manifested in, isn't it like the way he does his journal entries are just a series of texts to the Morrigan?
That is part of his journal entries, yes.
Yeah. Which I think is just really clever and fun.
It is a combination of his notes from the session, but also the running dialogue of text messages that she doesn't answer.
Yeah.
And then every so often I catch him off guard by having her reply to one, and he's like, oh shit, what?
So, huh?
No, it was, yeah, sorry, what am I doing? I am the host. Any other questions before we just ramble?
Yeah, I got one for each of you. First one to you, Grizz, is that with Shango, you mentioned how you want some more opportunities to kind of, like, dig into the relationships with some of the other Scions. I lost my train of thought, just like BP did. Great. You want to dig into the relationship with the other Scions because you didn't get a bunch of a chance to. Are there any things in particular you want to explore with that, or it's like any, like, moments where it's like, okay, father son, father daughter conversation, this is the, like, life lesson I'm giving you right now kind of deal?
Yeah, the interaction with Coda was adorable. Sticker's a lot of fun to roleplay with, and it was the earnestness. Is this a T in there? I fucking know. He was very earnest.
Yes.
Ernst.
Yes, there is a T in earnestness.
Earnestness. To which he was trying to genuine relay, because he understands Coda very well, because he has a kid that went the opposite direction of Coda. In which it's like justice and vengeance in that whole conversation was like rude.
Sorry.
So he wants to make it clear that it's not something you need to figure out immediately. It's not something that takes a lifetime. And at any point you need help trying to figure that out in your lifetime, I'm going to be there. Is what he's trying to relay, because he doesn't know Bastet terribly well. He has a decent understanding, but if it kind of felt like to him that Bassett would probably just kind of let it fester instead of trying to bring it to the light that it is an issue, like swirling around in Coda's soul. Like, this is something you need to bring to the light and figure out that you need to figure it out over time. For Oliver actually kind of got what Shango was going to tell him. And that's not know yourself, but know your self-worth. You are important to the people around you, whether you realize it or not. And like, you do as much as you can to support them, but you need to let them support you. But you kind of had that all figured out in the last session. So he doesn't really need to talk to you anymore at this point. I think the statement that he had where he was like, your parents do love you, and you're just like, yeah, sure, that would be the thing he wants to talk to Oliver about, most likely. Where it's like, if you think you don't have a relationship there, then you need to go forge one, because it's like, you only get one. Like, you only get you have two relationships with your parents, and one can go and then the other one can but this one can go at any point because they're mortal. The other one's immortal. You have all the time in eternity, hopefully, to go do that. So you might as well start now. Clint, he's just basing so much of his self-worth on what his mother thinks his worth is, and Shango can't stand that. That's what he's been picking up, and it's kind of true for the most part. Where it's like, did my mom reply to me? Who gives a shit, man? Go be your own man. Your mother's gonna do her own thing. It's like the opposite for what he has for Oliver in a way.
Yeah. What's wild is that she's kind of told him that. Like, there was a text message earlier in the season where he texted her about, should I do this or whatever, and she said, "You're an adult. You can make your own decisions." You know, where she's just like, I am not here to handhold for you. Like, you are your own person. Figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, just watching the split between Oliver being like, he's just my dad. I don't need to, like, whether he loves me or not, it doesn't matter anymore. It's like, no, it does matter. Like, have that knowledge that he does love you, and that he'll be there for you. And for Clint, she does love you, but she's not always going to be there for you. Like, it's guys, figure it out. But like, regardless of whatever your relationships are with your parents, Shinga's overall message, and I'm pretty sure it came across very clearly, it's like, he's going to keep saying it, I will be there if you need me, even if they aren't, because that's what Shingo, that's who Shingo is. Thank you for letting me ramble. I hope that answers your question.
No, that was exactly what I was looking for, and you did great. My other question is to BP, and this is just purely out of curiosity. No other reasons behind it whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't believe you. What's the question?
For Damon's farm, are the dryads just like stuck there, or can they come and go as they please?
Oh no, they can come and
go. Okay, good enough.
It not necessarily as they please. It's not like he's keeping them prisoner. It's more that them being relatively powerful supernatural entities, it's not always safe for them to leave, especially not alone. Right. But like, it's been established, and I think this was brought up very briefly when you guys visited Stefan, that one of the dryads goes and visits Stefan. Natine, the one with the poisonous flowers, who, funny enough, is named after what makes most of those flowers poisonous. But she goes and she visits him, so that they can come and go. It's usually that they would leave. They would do so with like an escort, mostly for their own safety.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was just curious, where it's like, is this like a situation where it's like they're connected to this place, so if they leave, they'll start to like die or something? I wasn't sure what the lore was.
Nothing like that. It's mostly that place is safe for them.
Yeah.
They do have ties to the land, so like, you know, unless they pick up and they kind of move and make somewhere else home, they're probably not going to want to be gone for long. Because like the longer they're away from their soil, the weaker they'll get, but they're not prisoners, and it's not like it has to be a permanent thing that they have to always be tied there. It's just that's where home is right now. the dryads, and I'm not entirely sure how much you guys have figured out about the different supernatural beings. Most supernatural beings in the setting are Titan spawn. It's just some of them are in thrall to the Titans, and some of them aren't. The dryads are not, but they are technically considered Titan spawn. So are the dwarves. They've thrown in their lot with the gods.
You know what? There is actually a question, BP.
Yes.
That I need answered. So, when exactly did Shango meet that dryad? Because it was like, hey, remember me? And I'm just like, no, I don't know. Can I roll for this?
Do I remember you?
Yeah. Do I remember you? Because I made the joke of New Year's Party 1979 with Rick James, like that kind of thing. But,
So there's a number of times that they could have met. It's doubtful that it was 1979 because the dryads were in the Hesperides until, a few years ago. But I was thinking it was probably because Damon lives in Georgia and because he is basically like the go-to supplier for most like scions and gods. Because he's one of the few people who has a place that can produce anything that affects gods and scions. My thought was just that he has like brought the girls with him to like Mardi Gras parties and shit like that.
That makes sense, because I was laughing when you said that. I was like, oh man, I'm trying to play a family man, and just here comes this strange woman just make me remember me, and I'm like,
yes, family man, but also Loa. Like, partying is just part of who they are.
And that's just the immediate remember me. I was like, shit, okay, no brisket, yeah, you got it. I think
he doesn't necessarily have to remember them, but trust me, if he keeps showing up, she'll make sure he does one day.
He'll never leave. No. And I told my family about the brisket thing, and they just started laughing. I was like, that would do it for you, wouldn't it? I'm like, yes. It's like, all right, this is everything you needed. I'm gonna get headed. What do you mean we're having brisket? Oh,
like, well.
God, I need a good brisket. Any other questions, comments, or questions for other people in the show that you'd like to be asked later on down the line?
Oh God, I have so many that it's hard for me to put them all into words. I am curious for Oliver to start with. Gary, what do you think now that Oliver has started to address his self-doubt? What do you think his like primary problem or baggage that he has to work on for him is? Also, what god do you think? What do you think he's going to be the god of?
That's a good one. The primary baggage that he's dealing with now, I already have in mind, and it's related to his relationship with Ogma, where it's that thing where everyone's like, you're the scion of Ogma, address yourself as such. And it's like, I don't want my merits to be based on him. I want to get by on my own merits. And that also ties into the thing where it's like, he doesn't have a job right now. It's like, just call your dad. He can get you a professor gig easy. And he's like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do it myself. So that's probably his biggest conflict at the moment now. What Oliver would be the god of, though, is very interesting. I think it's going to be based on how he progresses further with this idea of becoming a leader and stepping up and being more confident in himself. But I think, like, generally speaking, kind of like a god of like mentors or teachers is a very easy shoe-in for him. I think there's other things that could definitely be explored with him, what he could become the god of, but that's definitely the easy answer, the cop-out answer.
I like that, especially because
God of Grizz.
Maybe
because Ogma is the god of learning, so having his son be a god of like mentors and teachers is really interesting. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is that the conversation that, with that in mind, the conversation that Coda had with I don't remember if it was one of the other dryads or if it was with Damon, where they explained that introducing yourself as a scion of isn't about like justifying who you are, merit-wise. It's about allowing people to understand who they're dealing with from a political perspective.
Yeah.
Because the pantheons have interworking. So if you just walk up and say, "Hi, I'm Oliver Bright, I'm a scion," but you don't give a god, nobody knows how to handle you.
Mhm.
Like, they don't know they don't know what pantheon you're from, so they don't know what the proper greetings are. They don't know what kind of, expectations there are. They don't know if they're supposed to, trust you implicitly because there's a really good relationship between your parent and theirs. Like, they don't know. So if they don't know who you are,
which I think
it's funny that that's his new baggage, because that was literally just something that Coda addressed in the last episode.
It's interesting, and I think the lesson might be for Oliver to learn is that it's a matter of figuring out when to do that, because it can also be it's a hindrance if you don't say that, but it could also potentially be an advantage if they don't know how to handle you. It all depends on the situation, and I think that's a lesson he needs to learn, is when to use these tools in your toolbox.
Right. It has the potential to be an advantage if it's not seen as being rude.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's interesting that of all of them, that Clint does it every time.
Yeah,
and
Clint's really, really proud of who his mom is. Super fucking proud of that tie.
But I don't think, because I don't know if Gavin realizes it, because we're having this conversation now and we haven't had it yet, that he is proudly proclaiming at the top of his lungs, no matter who is around, who his mom is, despite the the connotations for it, which is even more frightening, actually, than not. There's so many different levels to it, because it's I am a scion of the Morrigan, whether you like it or not, which is even more ballsy than he realizes, probably, as a player and as a character. It doesn't matter who hates his mom. He's telling them that. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he does have the weird and unique position of, out of all of the gods, canonically, there are very few gods that are more feared than the Morrigan is.
Yeah.
So proclaiming that you are a scion of the Morrigan is ballsy in some ways, because it puts it very front and center who your parent is, and it's very unapologetic. But also, it also has the potential to be kind of a buffer, because people are a lot less likely to fuck with you if they know that the Morrigan might be who is sending an army to deal with them because they hurt you.
But I also imagine on the flip side, that one fucker is the Morrigan, huh? Yeah, Cock's gone, the Morrigan, huh? And you're just oh no, wait, hey, listen.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not saying that there are no drawbacks, because there definitely are. But also, of all of the gods that you could do that with, that's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah.
I just like the mental image of someone meeting Clint, and it's just kind of the pre-introduction kind of conversation where you get you look at Clint and it's okay, it's Clint, and then he's oh yeah, introductions. Hi, I'm Clint Brazos, scion of the Morrigan. They're huh? You?
Right, because he's just such a sweet, fluffy bean. And the Morrigan's kids are usually kind of dark and super serious and intense. Yeah. They're like the ultimate Hot Topic kids, and he's just not.
Yo, Abercrombie. Yeah, it's exactly what he is. But thank you both. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, good discussion.
Thank you for having us. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait for the next time I get to be on.
Oh, I think it's gonna be sooner than you think.
I had the feeling.
All right, but thank you all for joining us. This has been After Dawn, where you can see it on our Patreon. If you sign up for our Patreon, you can see it when it shows up on Thursdays. But if you do not, you're gonna have to wait from a month from now when it shows up on our YouTube channel, if I'm correct. Yeah, so sign up, join us. It is a wonderful community, and I love doing this, and I love both of the people on this call because they're wonderful human beings, and I cannot wait to fuck with them on Friday, sooner rather than later. Say goodbye to the people, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye-bye.